Welcome everyone to Here for the Horses. Glad you're here for the horses. Hey, today we're actually here for one another today. We're going to be talking about a subject that is a little bit different than what I normally do. Today I want to talk about grief of losing a pet. Okay. Nancy and I in the past have done a 4-week series called Healing Hearts, Finding Comfort After Pet Loss. And so I just want to go over a couple things quickly. You know, that series it's a 4-week series, so obviously we cover a lot more in that. But the reason I'm bringing this up actually is because my boarder's horse had to be put down this last week. She makes poor life choices, always has, and she put her leg through a fence and cut right at the hock. Now, it was interesting to me because it was one of those fancy Australian style fences that are just plain wire. They're not barbed or anything like that. It's just a simple wire, but there's like 6 of them, you know what I mean? And they always have like the nice, they're always built really nice. And she was dinking around, and she was kind of a weird horse. She didn't really have a good connection with her brain and her hind legs. So she kicked through that. She's been stuck in a fence multiple times. So she kicked through the fence at either one of the horses or at a dog, I'm not quite sure. And then got her leg caught and she just sliced it right across the hock. And it was really thick. It went through all the layers of skin, and she's done it before on the other leg and I took care of it. And it healed fine. So I assumed that was going to be the same as this one, but the vet came out and it was in the joint. I mean, it went in the joint. So she had to be put down, and the owner, even though she has not been out here very often, was really heartbroken and having a hard time. And so I mentioned the Healing Hearts series that I did for her. Um, she had a situation where her last horse, when it died, no one around her like gave her any comfort or said they were sorry or went to see how she was or anything like that. So it was just one of those situations where people don't know how to handle. I feel like it was people didn't know how to handle it and they didn't want to like bother her or whatever. But it was really hurtful to her that nobody really seemed to care that her horse just died. And so I wanted to make sure that this time that she didn't feel like that. So I definitely talk to her a lot, and I try not to say too much because some people say things and it makes it worse or whatever. So I definitely tried not to say too much, but I did tell her that her horse, I think got extra years at my house because she had a lot of issues. And just with the environment that I have at my house, it was really beneficial to her, and she was very happy, and she had a great herd to live with. So she was a pretty happy horse. Bad life choices, and a lot of them pretty regularly. So I feel like she did get more years here than she would have somewhere else. So, but that's what sparked this idea of revisiting this. And so I literally text messaged Nancy about an hour ago. I said, "Hey, are you going to be around? Let's do this series again." So that's what we're doing tonight. It's kind of it's a hard subject, but I feel like it's really important, and I feel like everybody goes through it at one point in time, if you have any animals at all. So, like I said, we have a full-on series that Nancy and I did together called Healing Hearts, and I'm going to give you access to that. It's a free series. I don't charge anything for it. We just are glad to have it out there. But I wanted to just go over it again because I thought about it this week and I offered it to my boarder. So I want to introduce Nancy. Nancy, tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of your history, and then we'll just get right into it.
Um, well, I am a grief counselor. I was involved in the afterlife professions for a number of years, well, about all my professional life. So I've dealt with a lot of grieving people. And I did own a pet cemetery and crematory. So we, I've dealt with people after the loss of their pets. And we had pet grief support groups, pet grief recovery groups. And, I've just got a lot of experience there. I've also got a lot of training. I'm a certified grief recovery specialist out of Sherman Oaks, California, as well as a pet loss professional and a few other certifications and lots of cats, which this one just really wants in here tonight. So I'm here to help. And I was honored that Erin and I did the Healing Heart series and did it on YouTube. But like she said, she's gonna send you a link.
Yeah, it was a pretty great series. We got a lot of participation, and I feel like it was really beneficial. So this is always available to anyone. So if you know of someone going through the loss of a pet, and it doesn't need to be a horse, feel free to reach out to me and get this series. Or I'm actually going to put, let me do it now so I don't forget. I'm going to put the first series, it's all on my YouTube, in the chat. Okay, so you can watch the first session,
And there were
and
4
then
sections.
yeah, you can find the rest of the sessions based off that session. Okay, so feel free to save that for you or your friends. Nancy, let's start off by talking about I found your 10 inalienable rights after the death of a special companion worksheet to be really interesting. So let's go through that quickly and just talk about those, and we can get some feedback from everyone also. And then I think we'll wrap it up. I thought what was really special that Nancy shared with me is different ways of coping and then different things that you can do. So I called it homework because you guys know I love to give homework, but different things that you can do on your own to help you in the grieving process. And there's a couple of them that I thought were really special, and people that took the series found them really impactful. So we'll talk about that at the very end. All right, take it away, Nancy. It's all yours.
Well, the first on the list is you have the right to grieve the death of a pet. You loved your pet, whether it's a horse, a cat, a dog, a parakeet, doesn't matter. You love them, and we have a special relationship with them. Um, I've had many a person tell me that they grieve more over the death of their pet than their father, mother, sister, fill in the blank. Well, part of that is because, we grow up and move away from home and typically move away from home and become more distant from our folks. Even though, Stephanie, you talk with your mom frequently, we don't all do that. But our pets are there. They depend on us every day for food, for, water, sustenance. We have the responsibility of taking care of them, and we become very close to them and they to us. And so when they die, it really leaves a big hole in our heart and our world, our space. Um, it's real. Grief is real. Anybody want to talk about that? Or you want me to speak it now? I have a dog wanting to in part of this. He's my new big dog. Yes. But you can go away now.
I had a comment on that, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure.
I did go through that class with you, and then just
Mm.
as you're talking about it, then I remember the loss. The loss comes back, like, even though horses died 2 or 3 years ago, or a
Yeah.
dog 2 or 3 years ago,
Yeah.
or even your family members. My mom
Mhm.
died in 93. You think about them, and then that grief and emotion comes back really, really easy and really, really quick. And I think we
Yeah,
have to acknowledge that ability to grieve again.
absolutely. I think one of the lists down here on the list is about grief bursts. It can be, I can't, number 5 here. You have the right to experience grief bursts. And this can happen right after the death. It can be 20 years later. I had a lady out, she was actually a journalist out to my crematory. She was going to do an article, and all of a sudden she starts crying because her horse had died years before, but it just brought it all back to her. And we do that. I mean, especially after a recent loss, we could be in the grocery store somewhere, and all of a sudden we have a grief burst. We start crying. And, you know, people might look at you weird, but you have the right to cry, regardless of where you are. It's helpful. It releases tension from our bodies. It releases toxins. You know, and the first thing we did in this life was cry. So it's perfectly normal. You know, after we were born, we cried. It's perfectly normal and natural. And yes, grief bursts can happen any point in time after a loss.
I just like all these because it reminds you that you have the right to do all this stuff. So sometimes we act like either we shouldn't do it because of how we were raised, or
Yep.
other people don't want us to do it, or other people don't understand, right?
Mhm.
So everybody handles grief differently, which Nancy said. And you have the right to handle it the way that you handle it. And you don't
Yep.
need to feel bad about that.
Right. Everybody's different. Everybody has the right to handle it in their own way. Um, Something went through my mind there about that. I lost it. Okay, it'll come back. Do you want to go on to number 2 or somebody else have a
Yeah, go
comment?
ahead, Nancy. They can always raise their hand if they want.
Okay, you have the right to talk about your grief. That helps us heal. Um, if we can find someone, a friend perhaps, who's also experienced a loss and is considerate, you know, emotionally in the same place or has been, and they're willing to listen, and that's the big thing, is the talking. And if we're on the other end, we need to listen. uh, you know, if you've seen the Charlie Brown cartoon about, I forget which one, but one of them sitting with the other one just because he needs company. um, I wasn't a very good explanation, but sometimes we just need to be there for a friend and let them talk if they're ready to talk. um,
I think also with that one, it's important, as with anything, to make sure that you pick your people wisely,
Absolutely.
you know, because sometimes if you if and you don't always know how people handle stuff, but if you know that your significant other or your best friend has a very different way of handling
Mhm.
grief or really serious issues in a different way that doesn't line up with something that's, if it's going to hurt you, don't choose them to talk to about it. Choose
Mhm.
someone that you can trust with your feelings.
And if you have a pastor, they're a good one to go talk with. um, our church has a prayer group that meets once a week, and you can have them pray for you. So, and we get into spirituality down here in another number 7. But that's just a great person to talk to if you have a pastor or a religious leader by whatever name. It's also helpful to normally to talk with them. And yeah, number 3, you have a right to feel a variety of emotions. I'm going to read this. Confession or confusion, anger, guilt, and relief are just a few of the emotions you might feel as part of your grief journey after a death of a pet. Feelings aren't right or wrong, they just are. And we do have feelings, and they're, again, normal and natural. And one, we mentioned anger here, anger and guilt. We get angry at the situation. We get angry maybe at the veterinarian because they didn't save our pet. We could get angry at that fence because it hurt our horse. You know, it doesn't have to be logical. And then anger turned inward becomes guilt. We think we should have done something different. You know, woulda, coulda, shoulda. If I'd only done this, this wouldn't have happened. And, you know, we humans like to have control of a situation. And that's partly why we get angry, because we've lost control. We can't help that our horse got hurt or colicked or, you know, fill in the blank. Even though we think, well, if only he'd been in a different pasture, if only we'd done this, or if I'd been out there to groom him that day, it wouldn't have happened. You know, we can come up with all kinds of things, but that's normal. But we get angry. And then, like I said, anger turned inward become guilt. So you have to learn to forgive yourself for your imagined uh, things you didn't do right, things that you imagined that you didn't do right. And if only I would have done that. I have to keep refreshing my screen here. Yeah, and sometimes we feel relief. And, we don't like to feel relief because someone died. But if your horse has been sick for months and you've done everything, I'm just using this as an example, you've done everything that you could, and everything the vet recommended, everything you found online, and then your horse still dies. Sometimes you feel relieved because it is over. You tried, you did your best, and it didn't work. But it's okay to feel relief. Um, Makes me want to cry just thinking about that. But again, our feelings are normal and natural, and we're entitled to them. However you feel is the way you feel, and there's no need to apologize for it. Oh, I know what I was going to say earlier. I don't know how many people over the years have apologized to me for crying. Here I am in a basically a funeral home, and they apologized for crying. And I always told them one or two. I said, "Well, this is a safe place to cry, or I'm a safe person to cry with." And I've said that recently at the church I'm at now. Somebody will cry, and I said, "Well, it's okay to cry with me. It's all right. You want a hug?" Now, not everybody likes hugs. So, speaking of that, I always ask for people's permission. Are you a hugger? And then this kind of gets into body language, but some people like the big old bear hug type of hug. Some people like the little, just touch me on my shoulders kind of hug. Well, you have to see what kind of hug they want, that they're used to, instead of somebody that just wants a barely, on the shoulders hug. You try to bear hug them, they don't like that. So anyway, I'm a hugger, so I ask people if I can hug them. I saw Leanne nodding her head and a bunch of that stuff I was saying. So yeah. And yeah, you have the right to be tolerant of your physical and emotional limits. After the death of a pet, a lot of times you'll feel fatigued. You just won't have any energy. You don't want to do stuff. And that's, all of this applies to the death of a person too. It affects our whole life, these things I'm talking about. So sometimes we just want to be alone. We don't want to socialize. It's called depression, really. There's a 5 stages of grief that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross came up with, and a lot of social or psychologists and all talk about different emotions of grief. She called them stages, and some people say, "Oh, Pasha, that's not true." Well, I can tell you, whatever you want to call them, they're out there. People do go through these stages by whatever name, and one of them is depression, where you just don't want anything to do with anybody. You want to stay home and think about your pet, think about, why did this happen? It's actually a healing stage. You can let it be a healing stage. Get alone with your thoughts and think about everything, and think about what meaning did this pet have for me? What am I supposed to learn from my pet? And I always did that. And then I thought I was the only one that did it, and I found that most people do it. What impact did this pet, this horse, dog, cat, parakeet, have on my life? And you can usually find the lesson that they've taught you. Um, they come to teach us things. And anyway, when you start getting through depression, and we were talking about, not wanting to do things. Well, that's normal. We want to sit at home. But as we work through the depression, hopefully we come into a resolution, which actually we talk about a little bit later here. Well, actually, I see we also, number 8 was you have the right to search for meaning. Uh, why this way, why now? But it's also about what I said about the pet. What did they teach me? What were they here to teach me? Um, as we work through depression, we come into resolution, which is, some people call it closure, but I don't like closure. I don't like the word because that's like a door slamming. It's done, it's over with. But no, it's not. Just like we talked about the grief bursts. But you can find reasons to go on. You can spend more time with the good memories than the death itself. And these events change us. They change us permanently. We're never the same, and that's not bad. It just is. Um, but again, eventually we come to a place where we can think more about the happy times and smile and laugh than grieve. I might have hit on that down here somewhere else, but anyway, okay. Number 5, well, we talked about the grief burst. And I like this one. 6 says you have the right to make use of a ritual. Um, Rituals can be anything. If you want to, bury your pet under their favorite tree or whatever, you can have a service. You can have people come, you can, whatever suits you, have sing songs, read verses. It's up to you, but you can have a ceremony, um, a memorial service, a funeral service, if you will, for your pet. And also, it's never too late. If you don't do it right then, you can have a service years later, months later. It doesn't matter. If you still have a need to do something in here, then you can do it. I tell my family that to have my memorial service, just build a bonfire and cook hot dogs and have s'mores, and will remember me. Some people will plant a tree or a bush or a flower in memory of their pet. Um, some One other thing to do is to actually write an obituary or a eulogy for your pet. Um, Honor them in what you write down. Some people will have a tattoo. Again, I don't know how many people I've served over the years that they'll put the horse head, or will pick a part of the body, but on their bicep, or on the inside of the wrist where they can see it easily. Yeah, there you go. Yep, that's it, Stephanie.
Yes, I got
Yeah.
my horse's brand that was on his shoulder. That was my very first tattoo,
Yep,
is in honor of him.
perfect. Yeah, and I've again, the
What
brands of
horse was that, Stephanie?
You didn't meet him,
Uh-huh.
Cody. His name was Cody.
Was that the
And
one with the halter too?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used his halter, and I put my favorite, the kids had got me a bronc halter that had his name on it. And I put a flower in it, and it hangs with a really pretty picture of him and, his tail.
yeah, that's another thing is people have jewelry made out of horsehair, whether it's bracelets or uh, attachments to a key ring, all kinds of things. But yes, yeah, there's a story about the horses that show up in heaven with their tail cut off, and they know why. The other people or animals know why the tail was cut off. They were loved. Yeah. Not that horses that go with full tails aren't loved, but you get the point.
My
Uh,
aunt saw that poem after my horse passed away, and she didn't understand, because the people that aren't in the horse world, they don't. I think animals that are in the house are more treated like family as opposed to animals that are outside, and generally of what I have experienced. But for a true horse lover, it doesn't matter that they're outside. We just love them with all of our heart.
you do.
And she, she was very kind, but she just didn't understand what was the meaning without, why do you take the tail? And so she thought it was really cool after I explained it and read that poem. But, non-horse people don't understand those things, I guess.
Right. And then you have people that don't understand, and they'll say, well, it was just a horse or just a dog. And there's not such a thing as just a horse or just a dog or just a whatever pet. No, they're important to us. in our life. And yeah, they
What
may
you
be
got,
out there.
Leanne?
We lost Leanne.
No,
There's-
I just had my hand raised. So two things. One, Hawk, he died a long time ago, but I had taken and had part of his tail made into a hat band.
Hmm.
And whenever I did a
Cool.
Pirelli audition, I always wore that hat. And I also used part of his tail and had earrings made. So
Yeah.
whenever I did a Pirelli audition, I had that hat with his, with the hat band and my earrings on. So I don't know if it's, ritual, I guess, but it was just something I did. And then recently, in 2000, it must have been in 2020, two of our horses passed away, and my sister makes stained glass, and I have a lot of stained glass. I haven't ordered it, but she did. I don't know if you can see this, but she does window
Oh, wow.
stained glass of your horse, and they're only about 10 inches, but they kind of sit in the corner of your window. And so as part of her stained glass, she does, so she takes pictures of horses or pets and does them as a corner window stained glass. And then also when Jubilee passed away, he was my grandson's horse. And so I did a collage for him in his room that's kind of reflecting there. And I kept a small one, but it's just pictures of him with Jubilee over the years,
Yeah.
so that he could have that in his room.
That's awesome. Yeah, people will have jewelry made out of, but like my little dog, I had a necklace made out of her with her nose print on it, because that's what I saw. I looked down and there she is, with her nose. And it's on a pendant. And my horse Bunny, I actually got her hoof print years ago, and it's on she's still alive, but I got it years ago and it's on a pendant. It's ready whenever I need it. But could be a hoof, a paw, a nose print, a silhouette. Any type of jewelry can actually be made with those images. Yeah, there's, of course, when I was at my business, we had a company that did that, but they're out there. You can find them, on the internet if you don't have one local. Another valuable thing to do is to write a completion letter. This is, you sit down and you imagine that your pet's there, whether, he's in the stall or in the pasture, but you're there with your pet. And then you just start writing about the things you did or the things you wish you would have done. Um, just pour out whatever's in your heart in this letter. And it'll take some time normally. I think when I did it as part of my certification, I think he gave us maybe an hour. Maybe it was longer than that. I don't remember. But just sitting and thinking, writing whatever's in your heart, put it on the paper. But then at the end, you don't say goodbye. You say, see you later, see you at the Rainbow Bridge, whatever is meaningful to you. Then you still imagine your pet's there and you read it out loud to them. And there will be tears in the writing, there will be tears in the reading. But it is absolutely the most therapeutic thing I've found for people to do. Yeah, like I said, you can talk about things you did, like when my Bunny will never ride on the beach, in the sand on the beach. But that, it's an image you see, that'll be something probably I wish we would have done. But then I think of, when we went to again, she's still alive, but I think when we went to the Black Hills up to Custer, area, and rode in the mountains up there, and how awesome she was and what fun we had, and just things like that. That's what you put down. And of course, you think how you can write how much you miss them and how much your heart hurts. And then yeah, go ahead.
Did you have a name for that letter? Did you call it something special?
A completion letter.
A completion letter. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nancy.
Oh, you're welcome. And you mentioned about okay, it made me think of the memory box. You can have a memory box where you could have you know, the pictures, you could have, you know, the hoof print in there, the horsehair. Um, you know, it's like a shadow box. Could be of any size that you put it, the things in there that are meaningful to you, and you know, hang it on the wall. You know, if it was, it's sitting in my home office, but I'd have it right over there on the wall where I could see it, you know, and those are pretty powerful. The collage that you made, Leanne, is that kind of thing that, just important things. And I like that collage idea too, of the different pictures. Oh, and some people will make scrapbooks. Of course, that's kind of outdated in a way, but I've had a couple people that just made the most beautiful scrapbooks with pictures and, you know, writing in them about what was going on. And then too, a photo album. Just there's, you know, nowadays all our pictures are online just about. But you know, I like the day where you took the roll of film to the wherever and had it developed, and then you had the real pictures, and then you know, when your pet dies, you can go through all these hard copy pictures and make photo albums, and then always leave space where you can write about what was special about that picture or that occasion. Um, I just recently bought, I learned, this is pretty exciting. There is a little printer and I bought one. I haven't used it yet, that you can hook to your phone or your iPad and you can print the picture right there off, off your phone or iPad onto this printer. I mean, it'll print the pictures. And that was really exciting to me. I haven't used it yet, but it's be the next best thing to take in the roll of film to Walmart or wherever and having it developed. Anyway, I've got one. It's still in the box, but I'll use it someday because I take lots of pictures, but they get lost in the cloud and I try to make albums. Anyway, it's just, I've never quite mastered it of printing them on a regular printer. So now I got a little printer that just prints photographs. So that's pretty special. Let me refresh my screen here again. Oh, you have the right to embrace your spirituality. At times of loss, it's natural to turn to your faith or spirituality. Engaging your spirituality by attending church or other places of worship, praying, or spending time alone in nature may help you better understand and reconcile your loss. Yeah, quiet time. My screen just changed color here. Oh no, it was that one up there. Okay. Um, yeah, finding comfort in nature, you know, that's big to me, is walking in nature or just sitting outside and, you know, being quiet. I mentioned the church earlier. Yeah, if you are one to pray, then that helps. You know, talking to God helps. You know, God heals the brokenhearted. That's a verse out of the Bible. I can't remember the where, but God does heal the brokenhearted. And you know, we can be angry at God too. Back to the emotions of we don't understand why these things happen. But I read the other day that sometimes God brings us tragedy or loss in order to teach us more things. Well, there we come back to the depression working into the resolution. That's part of that is you're you're changing, you're becoming a better person, even though you had to go through a loss. Um, you know, loss is inevitable and it's sad that we have to do that. But I also say that love and grief are the opposite sides of a coin. You can't have one without the other. And the more you love, the more you're going to grieve. It's just inevitable that, you know, two-sided coin. So, you know, meditating, quiet time, it helps. And like I said, prayer, if if that's in your bailiwick. Um, Sometimes it takes us a while to understand why. Oh yeah, here's the number 8. You have the right to search for meaning. I already talked about that some. Versus is saying more, why did my pet die? Why this way? Why now? Some of your questions may have answers and some may not. Ask them anyway. But mine was searching for meaning is why was my pet with me? And we don't always understand why they had to die right then. Why did that horse have to get his leg caught in the fence right then? It's not for us to understand, I guess. But yeah, the more you love, the more you grieve. Yeah. Number 9 is you have the right to treasure your memories. Memories are one of the best legacies that exist after the death of a special companion animal. Instead of ignoring your memories, find ways to capture them and treasure them always. Well, that comes with the working through your grief journey and getting to the place of resolution where you can treasure the memories more than cry because they happened. That also comes back to all the things, the ways we can memorialize them with the jewelry and the tattoos and the scrapbooks or photo albums or collages. Then we can look at those and smile. Not that there won't be an occasional tear, but time doesn't heal. They say, well, time will heal. Well, time doesn't heal. It's what you do with the time that matters. Whether it's doing some of the things we've talked about here, or there's resources for reading. And one of my favorite ones is called a Pet Remembrance Journal, and you can buy it on Amazon. But it gives you topics to write about, and places for you to put pictures or put things in there. But it's just real helpful because talk about memories. We always think we're going to remember stuff, but we don't. We tend to forget. So if you do the Pet Remembrance Journal, you'll have on paper, in a book, everything you can remember about your pet. And later it'll be a treasured memento. And there's other books, but that's one that I used to give to people in our grief groups to use. And again, you don't have to start at page 1 and work through it. You can just open it and see what it says. Is that something you can write about right then? We'll do. If not, close it up and open it to another page. But to me, that was about the second best thing for people to do. Refresh my page again. Yeah, you have the right to move toward your grief and heal. This is kind of a recap. Reconciling your grief after the death of a pet may not happen quickly. Remember, grief is best experienced in doses. Be patient and kind or tolerant with yourself, and avoid people who are impatient and intolerant with you. Neither of you or those around you must forget that the death of a beloved pet changes your life forever. Now, well, we already said that some, but yeah, you don't need to be around people who aren't tolerant of your feelings. People have lost best friends that way. They found out they weren't such a good friend because they simply could not understand their grief or be considerate about it. And again, it usually takes time. There's a family at church that just lost their dog, like, say, a week ago. I mean, she died. And they have an autistic boy. He's an adult, probably 20 or so, but he's autistic, and he just took care of that dog. Well, what I'm getting at is some people need to get a pet right away again. Some people, it might be years before they're able to get another one, But back to the autistic lad, they were going to wait, 4 or 5 months. Of course, they talk to me at church. People find me, talk about death and grief. So I knew they'd told me right away that their pet had died. Anyway, their autistic lad started showing symptoms of his autism. I mean, like just a day after the pet died. So they went and got another dog, a puppy. They brought her to church today. But now he's got something to, it's like an emotional support animal. He's got someone to care for. I mean, he took care of the other dog, and they needed to get one right away. Our last dog died in April, and I wasn't ready. But now, bingo, we've got two. We were gonna get, maybe older dogs, smaller dogs. Guess what? We've got an 85-pound and a 50-pound, about 3 years old. But hey, we got them and we're happy, you know. So again, some people need to get a pet right away. Some people never will. I had a lady that said, well, my husband died. I didn't go get another husband. My dog died. I'm not going to go get another dog. Well, that was her philosophy. But most of us I sure can't live without one, whether it's a horse or a dog or a cat. Yeah. Yeah. Horses are good for my soul. And I can't imagine ever not having one. Of course, the day might come, but I can't imagine not having one. Two. You can't just have one, you gotta have two.
I think it's also important. I know that we talked about this. I think it was on the fourth week or something where pets need to say bye to pets also. So horses say goodbye to other horses. So I made a point to when my dad's horse had to be put down, well, and Tanner, Georgia was not, some of them come around right away and really want to kind of smell it or whatever. And Georgia, not so much. So I kind of made her smell my boarder's horse just because they were always together. That other horse was like codependent. So she was always right next to Georgia at all times. And so, I mean, they eat out of the same grain bucket and everything.
Yep.
So I had Georgia go over there and she wouldn't smell her and she wouldn't really look at her. And so then I kind of brought her head down, like, I at least want you to acknowledge this. And so she smelled her 2 or 3 times. And then I brought Chester over, and I call him my emotional artist because he's my emotional male artist because he's just, more emotional. And, I can imagine him painting a portrait and then hating it so much he rips it up and throws it against the wall. I can just see him being like that. So I brought him over and he smelled her all over and, had to definitely, he kind of wanted to know what was going on and he certainly was more impacted. But it's not that Georgia didn't need to see that, but it's just she's not going to have that sort of reaction because it's not who she is.
And that's very true. We always, well, the horses, we try to have them where, the other horses can come around and smell whatever they want to do. Sometimes that can't be done for whatever reason. Um, but, horses do have emotions, they do know things. I mean, the story I have in mind is one of our brood mares. Well, I also rode her, but she, it was like midnight out in the pasture and we had to put her down. She couldn't get up, literally. And that was, well, anyway. So the vet come out, put her down. We put her in the trailer and she had two colts there. I mean, they were grown, but so the one, here comes another cat. The one I took her out to the trailer and let her smell her mom, and she did. She smelled her. And I told her, now you need to go back in and tell your brother what's happened and the rest of them. So she went right, and I put her back in the lot, and her brother was right there. She sniffed his nose, and he turned around and went across the pen and put his head against the wall. I mean, it was like he knew what she was telling him. Had one dog that was laying in state in here in our living room, and one of the cats went and laid on him, literally laid on him for several hours. But the other dogs could come around and say goodbye. And some are in denial, they don't want to look. They don't want to know. Like people, we sometimes we're in denial. But yeah, they'll like, no, I can't do that. It's not true. That'll happen. They have emotions and feelings too.
Yeah, Leanne.
I was gonna say it's not just horses, it's dogs and horses, because
Oh, yeah.
years ago, well, I was telling you about Hawk when he died, and he was our first horse we had here that died. And we had a dog at that time, Smokey, and Smokey was really well trained to go get the horses. And I'd always send Smokey go get the horses. And after Hawk was gone, he was used to counting to four, right? I go get four
Mhm.
horses. And he didn't understand that there wasn't a fourth horse out there to go get. And, and I never thought about bringing him over to smell Hawk, when Hawk passed away.
Right.
And I broke my heart because he's like, wait, I go get four horses. Where's that other horse? He just kept looking for that other horse.
Mhm. And it's important to tell pets what happened, that their friend, brother, whatever died. And even that's with, people with children. You need to use the harsh words, dead and died. And explain that you took care of, Fido the best you could, but that he has died. He's passed on, whatever word you use, but died is really important. And that reassure the other pet that you will take care of them, just like you took care of Fido. I mean, that they're secure. Um, it's just important to tell them everything, whether it's, the dog's been to the vet and, had whatever, or the horse that, cut his leg so bad that he couldn't be saved. But they need to know, you need to tell them what happened, and that the other pet is dead and won't be coming back, at least not in physical form.
Has
Sometimes
this made anyone think of anything? Oh yeah, go ahead, Jennifer.
Yeah, this conversation is very well timed.
Mm.
My daughter this year, she has become very interested in the Day of the Dead, which is November 1st. But she was just setting up a table today because apparently, I think it's Monday, November or October 27th in the history of the Day of the Dead is the day that you honor animals and pets that have passed from your life. So just this afternoon, she set up just outside my office here a table with pictures and things that belong to all of our animals who have passed. And so pictures of the dogs, their collars, you lay out treats. So there's treats laid out for the dogs. We've added, my first horse passed away. I had to put him down almost 2 years ago now. And so we have a picture of him and his tail and a few horse treats out. And it was um it really hit me. I mean, it's and there's candles, it's she's got the tablecloth and the little candles and they're all lit right now. And it's very beautiful when you walk up and the hallway is dark and there's these candles flickering. But I was telling her, I'm like, oh my goodness, wow, this is powerful. I really feel this. And she doesn't like that I'm an emotional person. And she said, Mom, before you go down that path, just remember this is a celebration. This is not to feel sad for who you've lost. This is a celebration. Um, and it's the day so it fits in with that ritual every year to tell the stories, to remember the stories of those pets and how they, the dogs, these dogs that have recently passed away in our family all were living with horses. So we have those stories of, like Leanne was saying, the dog that would go bring in the horses. We've got those stories too. So it's been really a kind of an interesting day. Um, and then to have this conversation, I really appreciate it. But it brings up a lot going through this list. And um, I think the thing that I've been thinking about too lately, I just realized I was at the barn where I board my other horse learned that a boarder there had recently put her horse down, and I didn't know. Um, but it brings up so much, um, you know, coming on 2 years of me having to put Saint down, how pets, like it's hard to put a pet down, but still there's a difference. I found a real difference between losing my dogs and putting my horse down. Like it was a really different experience for me, and I don't know if anyone else has felt that way, or, but it's the size, the sheer size of them, or what, but or the different type of relationship you have, like that I have with my horse versus that I have with my dog, because I ride, I'm on his back, and we need to have that different, you know, level of trust with each other. So there's, I just, getting over the horse has been way more difficult than getting past the grief of a dog for me. Thanks for listening.
You're welcome.
Thanks for sharing, Jennifer.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
amazing. Thanks for that info on the that celebration too. I didn't know that. That's really funny, you know. Go
Yeah,
ahead, Leanne.
Um, that was interesting, Jennifer, on the difference between grief in losing a dog and losing a horse. And I don't want this to sound callous, but I had a friend say once, horses live too long and dogs don't live long enough.
Hmm.
But in my life, I've lost way more dogs over the years
Yeah.
than I have horses. And I think part of that is, you know, I mean, I think that makes the grief harder in that you've had a horse for, you know, I mean, I have had Ellie now for 17 years, but she's 23. But the horses that I lost in 2020, I'd had them since they were 3. And so they've been a part of your life for a very long time. And you go through so many stages with them between the training and where they're at and where you're at, that I think that that may be why it's harder, just because the relationship is in some respects a longer term, even though I feel like I'm closer to my dogs because they're like with me every day, all day long.
Right.
But you spend a lot of time in the relationship with the horse, if that makes sense.
I think it's also really important in times like that too, that you get to not feel guilty about how you grieve differently also, you know.
Oh, yeah.
That you know, even sometimes when it comes to grieving some horses more than others, you know, you kind of feel like, man, I sure didn't grieve that one horse or that one dog as much as I grieve the other dog. And then you kind of feel guilty, like you feel bad about it. And just acknowledging that you grieve different animals differently. And sometimes, I mean, it could be a horse, dog, cat, bird, whatever. And that you don't need to feel bad about it because, as we said, we get to grieve the way we grieve, you know.
Mhm.
You don't need to feel bad about anything. But there is definitely a difference, so it's okay.
Yeah, we get to grieve in our own way as long as it's not illegal and doesn't hurt anybody.
We try to follow those rules in general.
Yeah, true. That's true.
Well, Nancy, thank you so much. I feel like we should probably revisit this almost yearly because it's just such a prevalent situation that we find ourselves in, and we have to remind ourselves that we have permission to have feelings and grieve. And, you know, we need help and we need reminders that you could be carrying around grief that you're not aware of. And then some person starts a Zoom call and says, we're going to talk about our animals that have passed. And then all, you know, it all comes back to you. You're welcome for that, you guys. But I just think it's important to be okay with, you know, experiencing it. And obviously all of us have been through that before and it's tough. And life is hard sometimes, but it's great having a good group of people to share that with. So glad
And
y'all are here.
this
And
is
yep, go ahead.
this is a good time of year to have it because the holidays sometimes are extra hard as far as, missing people, missing pets, missing whatever, and grieving. It's a big time, Thanksgiving, and even Halloween, but Thanksgiving and Christmas in particular, of missing people and pets. So it's a good
Yeah.
time to have it, is what I'm saying, to revisit the
Yeah.
healing hearts.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I will put all those links up too in case you guys want to check out that series. It's fantastic. It goes into a lot more detail, but check it out and make sure to share it with some friends if you think they need it. And yeah, you're welcome, Stephanie. And hopefully that was helpful. I guess your homework for this week will be to either write a letter or think about your pet or make a little, I was just thinking I have a little necklace of my horse's face and I'm going to go put that in my car so it can dangle, so feel free to, do a table like Jennifer's daughter did and celebrate lives because we're only around for a short period of time, you know what I mean? So there's your homework if you choose to accept it. Thanks, Nancy. Appreciate you.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm honored to be able to do this.
We'll keep doing it. You just have to
Yep.
remind me every once in a while.
Okay.
All right. Bye, everybody. Have a great night.
Thanks,
You're,
Thank you for
Nancy.
joining.
you're welcome.
Bye-bye.